two handouts, because we will be talking about one of them pretty much the entire class. I feel like I should have played the first few notes of Beethoven's Fifth, because we are talking about the exam today, the entire class. The landscape version handout is the exam. This is almost exactly what you will see when you choose to pick up the exam. Now remember, you can choose either Friday the 1st, Monday the 4th, or Tuesday the 5th. You can pick it up as of 9 a.m. And now we're looking, here are the instructions. In room 102B, that's the library administrative office. Be familiar where that is. You don't want to be wandering around lost on Monday or Tuesday morning. If you don't know where that is and want a guided tour, after class we'll walk up and I'll show you where it is. So again, you'll be able to pick it up at 9 a.m. on whatever of those days you choose. And it will be due back at 5 o'clock. You will be emailing your answers to law exams. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. So as it says on our course requirements, and here also, the exam's worth 400 points. To earn these, answer all of the questions. I know I've said this a lot of times before, but even as much as recently as assignment 4, a couple of you missed a sub-part of a question, and it just breaks my heart not to have to take off points for that. So make yourself a checklist. I'm going to be talking about that in a little bit, how you might want to do that. Each question, after you're done with the question or the part, really go through and make sure that you've answered. And then if you have time before it's time to email it in, take the extra 10 minutes and go through the question sheet and your answer and make sure you've answered all the questions. It's due back, as I said, emailed in at 5 p.m. This exact exam was originally designed as a 4-hour exam, 4-hour take-home exam. 4 hours was a little tight, and got several comments that year that was like, this was too much in 4 hours. So, but there were plenty of people who finished it in 4 hours. So the point being that you've got 8. So you should have plenty of time. So you're going to pick up the exam sheet in 102B, and the exam will, as I said, look exactly like this with one minor, one major exception. The minor exception is you will have a question number. Instead of X on this top right-hand corner, it will be a number between 1 and 10, since there are 10 of you. The other difference, and this is the major exception, is under your issue, right now you see a big blank space, there will be an issue there. There are a bunch of different issues. And no, it will not be HMO liability, it will not be T, and it will not be FOIA. It will be something different. Okay, so going over the instructions. When you email your answers, make sure that you put your exam number. So you all have exam numbers from the registrar. This is an anonymous exam, by the way. I will be grading it not knowing who's who. I'll just see whatever digit number that is. Put the question number, and again, that'll be in the upper right-hand corner of this page instead of the X, and put advanced legal research, all of that on the first page. And by the way, you'll see these instructions. So you'll be getting, as I said, this identical sheet. And as I already mentioned, all your exam must be submitted no later than 5 p.m. via email to the law exams, and that's the standard exam email. You may have used that for other exams, I'm not sure. And in the subject line, and this helps the registrar's office because that's where the law exams email goes, put the course name, advanced legal research, put your exam number, again, whatever that is, and put my last name, again, all of that in the subject line. And then I'm asking you to return your question sheet, so the one with the number and your particular issue, back to Diane in room 102B. After you email to law exams, you should receive an automatic reply saying, hey, we received this. make sure you receive that and keep it. If there's something weird that goes on in transmission, if you have that email, that will help everybody trace it back, as also to let us know that you did indeed submit your exam on time. Oh, and classic, I don't know if you've ever done this, but I've done it more times than I can count. Make sure you actually attach your exam to your email when you email to law exams. As I said, I do that now and again. Okay, so following part 3 and 4, so including all the information on the top of your exam and in the subject line and getting the exam sheet back to Diane, if you do all that, you already start off with 10 points. So just, yeah, question?
Do we have to turn this, that whatever the question sheet actually is, to Diane that same day at 5 p.m.? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
So email your exams, drop off at 102B, go home and celebrate.
Okay.
In that order. Oh, and by the way, as I said, I'm going through this. It's a weird exam, I know, so that's why we're spending an entire class. Please ask questions. Some of you are really good about asking questions. Some of you are a little quieter. If you don't like asking questions in class and something confuses you, please ask me. I'll be in my office, usual time. You see me at the reference desk, email if that works for you. But please make sure you understand what it is you're being asked.
Question?
Yeah.
Do we need to notify you which day we're going?
No, don't,
tell you.
please. This is an anonymous exam.
Okay.
I don't want to know. Make sure you take it, but one of those 3 days, but other than that. Okay, all good questions. Okay, let's move on to the substance. So this is essentially a guided research journal. As you'll see from the questions, I'm guiding you through the research. What I need you to do is to coherently explain your strategy. The more detail you provide on how to search, and by how to search, what I mean is you tell me good search terms. Not that I would do a keyword search, but you tell me liability or HMO, if you think that's actually turned out to not be a bad search. So I went to the table of contents and that showed me other great sections, such as section 1.2. As I already saw 1.1 and 1.2 was good, I discovered in the table of contents. I went to the index and used these terms. By the way, you can use print or online, totally up to you. If you take the entire exam, fingers to keyboard, and the only paper you touch is your exam paper, that's totally fine. And students have done that before in the past successfully. Other students decide, I don't want to deal with this, I want to go to the books, and they've done that. Totally up to you.
But I'm sorry, so you don't have to like, say that I don't know if I can phrase this. So you don't have to like a fully exhaustive search, you don't have to go to both, like in other,
No.
the assignments, okay, you can just.
You
Okay.
choose,
All right.
if you're, a lot of you are Westlaw preferers, so if you want to go on Westlaw and spend the entire exam on Westlaw. A couple of you really prefer Lexis, fine. Any of you, I don't think any of you prefer Bloomberg, but hey, if you want to try Bloomberg, that's fine too. Like I said, print, entirely up to you, and only one place. Now you may decide, this isn't working. Maybe let me try Lexis, see if that, because once in a while that does work better. But if one service works for you, that's totally fine. So how to search. So like I said, good search terms, good search techniques, table of contents, index. Also, how to search, you're telling me the resources. I want you to be specific. Don't tell me I went to encyclopedias, tell me I went to AmJur or ALR. And in AmJur and ALR, I found section 42.8 under health topic, making that up. Law review titles, statute, reg sections. Don't tell me you need to check statutes. Tell me I went to the code and I found New York Public Health Law 4410. And tell me how you found New York Public Health Law 4410. Also highlight, and again in how to search, if you find one set of resources led you to another, secondary source, that section in the encyclopedia led you to the statute section, mention that. Okay, as I mentioned in that big blank space, that's where you will have your issue. There are a bunch of different issues. I am not testing issue spotting. We went through an exercise a couple of times, but that's not really what this class was about, as I've also said many times. So in each fact pattern, as it's written out, you will see the necessary terminology. I'm not making you go through that whole who, what, where, why, when, how, figuring all the different synonyms. You'll see the terminology. You'll have to do some issue spotting because you'll read the issue and you'll have to figure out what to search. It will look pretty much like this assignment 1 looked when I gave you your fact pattern for your area of the alphabet. And actually in those fact patterns, if you were to go back to assignment 1, you'd discover that actually there were pretty good search terms in there. So that's what your issue is going to look like on the sheet you pick up on whatever day you take the exam. When you're creating your searches, I will consider the quality of your searches. In other words, if you use very generic terms like law or court, that's not going to get you anywhere searching, so I'm going to take that under consideration. Or if you totally miss what the area of law is, which you really shouldn't, because as I said, it is fairly straightforward, set forth in the fact pattern. Okay, I don't know if any of you did this for the assignments, which was perfectly fine, but for the exam, you may not work together. In fact, you may not have any human contact. So no going on Facebook and asking questions or emailing or doing the live chat Lexis Westlaw. This is totally you. This is an honor code issue. That also means don't ask me any questions. I will not be answering them. If you have any kind of issue, talk to Diane in 102B. If there's something to do that, or talk to the registrar, and depending on your issue, you're going to have to determine who makes more sense. If it has to do with the specific exam, talk to Diane. Diane will then contact me. Okay. So as I said, no human contact, social media, smoke signals, you name it. If you do want to use print, bless you, if you do want to use print and you go to the library catalog and you find whatever you find in the library catalog and you get a call number, the only exception to the no human contact, if you get a call number, you may ask the staff at the circulation desk. So the very front circular desk, the folks who charge things in and out, and they will tell you where to find that resource. That's it. So not the reference librarian, as I said, certainly not me. Okay. Just making sure I say, okay, as I've said, I want you to understand what's expected of you. So I'm going through it today. If you're going to go through it as you study. If you have any questions, ask. I will be on email, usual ways. Because the way the exam is scheduled and it goes over a weekend, the way I need to do that to be totally fair is I will answer questions up to Thursday, 5 p.m. I'm going to have to skip Friday because I won't be able to know if anyone, well, I'll know if someone's taking the exam, but I won't know who it is. So I'm not going to answer any questions between 9 and 5 on Friday. But then I will answer questions submitted after the exam's due on Friday through Sunday at about 3 p.m. I have a personal obligation, so I can't push it beyond 3 p.m. On the weekends, I won't be as quick as I might be during the week, but I will check my email. The other, if you have computer problems, IT are the folks to speak with, and they're used to dealing with that with exams. Save your exam. I know you've heard this a million times, and then something's going to happen and the lights flicker or your computer has a hiccup. Save your exam as frequently as you can think of it. Just click on the little save. Save yourself a whole lot of headache. Okay, any questions? Let's look at a question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you say we had to stick to print or online, like whichever one we choose? Or
Totally up to you. You can mix and match.
Okay.
You can do Westlaw here for one question, Lexis for another question, print for another question. Entirely up to you.
Do we have to list which one we're using for it?
Let's turn to the questions because the
Okay.
answer to that, the overall answer to that is yes. And the overall answer is, should I tell you? The answer is yes. When in doubt, include it. And I'm going to say that a bunch of more times, but just generally, when in doubt, include it. Okay, so let's take a look at any other questions? Let's go to page 2. So you see 2 columns, Roman numeral 1 for secondary, Roman numeral 2 for primary. Those are essentially the 2 parts, or 2 of the parts of the exam. There are 3 parts altogether. So part 1 has to do with secondary. And under secondary, you see 3 different types of resources, and I'm going to ask you to answer the questions in part 1 for all of those 3 types. So type number 1, encyclopedias. You get to choose between AMGR, CJS, or ALR, and yes, I'm categorizing ALR as an encyclopedia. Choose one. Don't answer for all 3. Do not waste your time, okay? But you do need to choose one. Answer all the questions in part 1 for law reviews. Answer the questions in part 1 for treatises, loose leafs, formerly known as loose leafs. Okay, so let's look at the questions in part 1. So for your topic, in all 3 types of resources in column 1, which is what I was just saying, for each resource describe the following. Which resource did you choose? And in which format? So Royce, there's your question. So tell me whether you're on Lexis, Westlaw, Bloomberg. If you went to the web, remember lots of good secondary sources on the web. If you do go to the web, tell me the website. And the next lines are just more explanation for you in what I'm asking you to tell me. So if you do choose print resources, let me know what the title is. So encyclopedias, AMGR, CJS, ALR, title of the treatise, name of the law review article. Give me an author if that's appropriate, more appropriate for law review articles and treatises. No authors for AMGR, CJS for encyclopedias, so don't worry about that. Date of publication, and with the date last updated if it's print. If you're going online, give me the name of the service, Lexis, Westlaw, Bloomberg. If you decide to go to the other databases, CCH, BNA, any of the ones that we've looked at. Again, if you go on the web, give me the web address. So for example, question 1, for our example through class, I would say I am going on Westlaw. And then I would explain for secondary sources, I put in my search, and you'll tell me what the search is. That's actually question 2. And then I would say I filtered by secondary sources, and then I clicked on ALR. And you'll see the last part of the question for question was, and filters used pre and post search. Some of you like to do pre-search filters, so you like to first narrow to secondary sources, then do your search, then narrow later, or narrow down to law reviews before you search. That's totally fine. There's no right, wrong way. It's just your preference. Just tell me what you did. And to the extent that it is relevant when that database was last updated. Now, it's going to be more relevant for treatises. So if we go here on Westlaw, that's not what I wanted. This is what I wanted. So for instance, law reviews are going to have a citation in a year. You don't have to update the law review database. But if you're looking at a treatise, and let's go to Dobbs Law of Torts. I want you to tell me in the iLink, database updated through June 2014. Okay, can I go to question 2? I want you to tell me all of the searches you tried. And that includes post-search, search within results. And again, that should be in your history if you're using Lexis, Westlaw, Bloomberg. Or if you are using print materials, tell me the search terms you looked in the index. And then, so you're going to tell me a bunch of searches if you did a bunch of searches. If your first search worked, then you're only going to tell me one search. And you're going to tell me, if you do a bunch of searches, you're going to tell me which one was the best one. Question, I'm sorry.
Okay, do you want us to break down the search terms we use for each source, or just all the search terms we used?
If you use different searches for each source, then I want to know.
Okay.
And then in question 3, if there are no more questions about 2, want the full citation information for the best titles or sections. Again, depends on the resource, so it depends. So for ALR, you're going to tell me the title of the ALR, you're going to give me the citation. For law review, title of law review, author, citation, please include years when you have them. For treatise, I want the title of the treatise, author if you have it, section of the treatise if you found a section. So best title, section, resources or service. So whichever the best title was that you found, maybe you just searched in one place and found it right there. Maybe you went to a couple of places to search for law reviews. Tell me, for that best one, tell me where you found it. If you went to Lexis and Westlaw for whatever reason, tell me I found this on Westlaw using such and such search. Now as you go through and start to think about this, these questions are somewhat duplicative. It asks for some of the same information that I asked you for in other questions. That is intentional to make sure to do the best I can to help you to give me the information I'm looking for. So if you happen to mention your searches and pre and post search filters in question 1, you can say the searches I did were in question 1, the best search is so-and-so. Just be as clear as you can about that. So in question 1, I'm basically asking you to tell me the sources that you searched. In question 2, the searches, and in question 3, the best results and how you got to those best results. And do your best to give me the information to help me easily find what the sources, when you give me the best source, to help me easily find that best source. So again, the citations, the treatise titles, I'm going to do my best to figure out what you mean if it isn't clear, but the more difficult you make it, the less likely I will succeed. So again, with Amjur, for instance, you're going to see the volume number in so let's go to American jurisprudence. Okay, and we're just going to do so if I decide that's the best section, the volume number is okay because that's how Westlaw and Lexis cite it, but what I really need is the topic, physicians, surgeons, and the section number. For ALR, it's going to be the more traditional site, 56, ALR 5th, I think it was, 737, liability of HMOs, or whatever the exact title was. Again, years where you have them, so particularly true for law reviews. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to move on to part 2 then, which is primary. Oh, John.
No evaluation questions I can assign?
Not really, no. There's going to be a research strategy question, which is part 3, but it's not a compare and contrast because I'm not really asking you to go to use the same 2 different sources for the same question if you don't have to. Ready for part 2? Primary sources. Structured pretty much the same way as secondary sources. Again, under column 2 primary, you have the 3 major components of primary sources. So our codes, and you'll be looking at federal for your issue and state. And I guess this is the other minor difference of the sheet that you'll be picking up. You'll actually have a state abbreviation rather than 2 question marks. And they'll all be different states, and none of those states will be New York. Because I don't want to give anybody an advantage since we've done a lot of New York stuff. The next kind of primary source, judicial decisions. Again, I'll ask you to look for both federal and state. And administrative materials, regulations and admin decisions, federal and state. So you'll be answering the questions for all of those types of primary sources. So again, I'm asking you to look at your issue for all of the sources in column 2 and describe for each. The titles of the resources used and what format you used. So I went to the USCA, and on Westlaw would be how I might say that, or Lexis, or what again, or if you decide to go on the web. And then the filters you used. So the way I tend to do it is I do my search first. So I would say I did my search, liability HMO, and I filtered to statutes, and then within the statutes, federal. And then I might say I did a search within results for denial of care, if that's what I did. And so those are the filters used on Lexis, Westlaw, and Bloomberg. And now the date the resource was last updated where possible. And I want to go over this again because there's a little bit of confusion sometimes. Okay, I want the date the resource. So the date the USCA, USCS on Lexis, if that's where you're going, was updated. So that is the currentness. I want to know that this is up to date. This goes to the importance of updating. I want to make sure Westlaw is telling me that 1144 is up to date. So it's current through. So current through Public Law 113, 235, approved, as you see, 12/19/2004. What I'm not asking is when the section was actually last changed by Congress. That's our legislative history, parenthetical credits. Okay, for question number 1, again, it's going to apply to codes. For judicial decisions, you might tell me when on Lexis and Westlaw, you used the key numbers, or you did a search and you used the head notes. At some point, going back to statutes, you might tell me you used the table of contents. And again, this questions 1 and 2 are being blurred a little bit because I'm talking about searches. I did liability HMO, and if you answer that, if it just flows and you answer that in question 1, just in question 2 say, I did the search mentioned in question 1, and that's fine. When we're talking about judicial decisions, again, the different resources you use, not just that it's Lexis, Westlaw, Bloomberg, but you used head notes. You used the table of contents. You used the key number system. Again, the pre and post search filters if you use, the date the resource was last updated. Now I showed you that for the codes. That's not relevant for the judicial decisions. But it is relevant for regulations, because regulations are essentially like the codes, like the statutes. Okay, so, and at some point, moving to question 2, all of the search queries, now all of the search queries online that you used or in the index, and the most effective search. So again, it's very possible that you choose to answer the search, you choose to tell me your searches in question 1, totally fine. Just let me know, and then remember to let me know what the best one was. And it's okay to use, if you wind up actually not searching, but getting a reference from a secondary source, that's okay. If you determine that's the great section, tell me that's how you got it. So again, tell me the resource And in the search question, just say, I found it through using the secondary getting reference from Amjur or wherever. Just tell me what you did. And again, I want the full citation for the best code sections, the best judicial decisions.
When you're saying best, do you mean like the most on point, not necessarily like the highest court in that state?
Most on point, yes. And with regard to the judicial decisions, I'm not expecting you to spend the day reading 50-page cases. From whatever results you get online or whatever descriptions you see in the annotated codes, remember the annotated codes? I'm expecting to see reference to notes of decisions. Even if you say, I looked at notes and decisions, that really didn't help. But again, not expecting you to read the entire case. Just find one that looks like it might be one you would actually want to investigate further. So again, the best code sections, best judicial decisions, the best administrative materials, and again, regulations and admin decisions. Again, include the dates, and again, this is duplicative, so if you did it in question 1, I won't expect to see it in question 3. The dates that your resources were last updated. Again, I don't really care when the legislature last changed your section. That's not relevant for when you're doing research and making sure you've got the most up-to-date information. The only time that's relevant is for legislative history research. But you do need to make sure in updating information that you update whatever your case. So that means Shepardized key site or B site. Don't forget that. Again, just tell me I Shepardized and it's fine. If you can, state the name of the section, and by name of the section here in section 1144, it's not a great name, but it's the name, other laws. And actually just to review on state materials, so here's section 4410 of the New York Public Health. The name here, Health Maintenance Organizations, Professional Services. And again, the updating information is the currentness. Not that it was last updated in 96. It's current through 2015, chapters 1 to 13. Okay, so I'm asking you to answer questions 1 through 3 for federal and state statutes, federal and state judicial decisions, federal and state regulations, federal and state admin decisions. This is where a checklist might help. Create one that makes sense for you. What I have done, and this is the first year I've done this, and I did it with a little bit of fear and trepidation, is this other handout is a possible checklist template for you on how you might want to answer the questions. It's a lot of words and numbers there. If it makes sense to you, fabulous. If you're looking at this handout and you're saying, that's just a garble of letters and numbers, toss it. I will post this on Twen on the web. By the way, on Twen on the web, just getting, somehow I got out of our course. I have moved this final exam section up to the top here. As you ask me questions between now and Sunday at 3 o'clock before the exam, I will post those questions here and email everybody with the answers. In fairness, I want everybody to have benefit of understanding what's going on. The day you decide to take the exam, you probably want to do this before 9 a.m. the day you take the exam. This template that we're looking at, actually both templates we're looking at. The questions are here, so you see final exam questions, Actually, the legislative history template is in a separate document, and we'll be looking at that in a moment. It's actually stapled here. You'll want to download these, and probably the best way for you to answer the questions is download them as Word documents and put in your answers. And then all you need to do is just change the question number up top and put in your exam number, because it already has advanced legal research, obviously, in the document. And I will post this there as well. Again, if you find it useful, great. If you don't feel like you have to use it, if it's confusing to you, just ignore it. So again, you're in part 2, you're answering questions 1 through 3 for a whole lot of different sources. So you might want to answer question 1 for all the sources, question 2 for all the sources, or 3 for all the sources, or you might want to go by source and answer the questions. And that's essentially what that template is. Totally up to you. I want it to make sense to you. What makes sense? I mean, there is a particular way that makes sense to me if I were taking the exam, but it does. What matters is it works for you. Okay, this is important. All of the issues will have decent secondary sources for each of the 3 categories. So there will be an encyclopedia. I'm not telling you whether it's AMSR, CGS, or ALR. There will be some. There's always a decent law review, pretty much, or close. And don't spend hours on any of them. Get as close as you can. Just and treatises, you may have to. There may not be a treatise exactly on HMO liability, but there is a treatise on tort law. There is a treatise on healthcare law. And even if that particular treatise doesn't answer your question, if it's a treatise on healthcare law that you might want to look at, that's good for the answer. There is definitely federal code sections that apply to your question. They may not answer it completely, but they'll apply, and there are relevant state code statutory sections. There are also relevant federal regulations. They may not be perfect, but they are relevant. You may or may not find state regulations. If you don't, just tell me what you did. You may or may not find federal admin decisions or state admin decisions. If you don't, just tell me what you searched, both what your search was and what resource you searched. So for those resources, obviously don't spend a lot of time. Question?
If we're not finding something using West, do you want us to go on to Lexis and try and search on there as well?
Not for the admin decisions and not for the state regs, because there just may not be, depending on your state and your issue. But you should, as I said, you certainly should find federal statutory. You should find cases that sound close. Again, I don't want you reading the cases, they just have to sound relatively close. And I think you all know what I mean,
Yeah.
but okay. You might want to try that for federal regulations, because you should find something that's, again, not perfect. Don't be a perfectionist. One of my favorite expressions in life is don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. If you find good, that's good. And if you do find, just for the things you should find as well as the things you may or may not find, tell me how you found it. Cite to it. I found 21 CFR, forget the number already, and what was your search, and the filters. And all of that will be part of answering questions 1 through 3. And again, as long as it's in one of those questions, refer back, or if it's clear, I'll find it. And So again, the duplication in the questions is designed to make sure you give me the information one way or the other. As long as it's one way, then it doesn't have to be the other. Okay. Questions? Okay, for oh, John.
This is not a lot different from what we've been doing all year, right?
That's the plan. In fact, great segue into legislative history. If you turn the page, you'll see part B of part 2, because legislative history is primary, is the legislative history question. And I'm asking you to fill in what is now your favorite chart, I'm sure, on page 4. Now, when you get the question from Diane in 102, it will all be stapled together like this. For what you fill in, you will want to download the legislative history template as well as the question template. Just the way they're formatted, I couldn't put them all together. And this is exactly what it's going to look like. So you want to put your exam number in, again, because it is a separate document. So this way the registrar's office will know to put the two documents together so you have a complete answer. You will want to look at your state session law citation. So whatever section you found for state law, tell me, answer the question, which is back on page 3. So for the state code section, indicate the session law citation, number on year. So here on 4410, it was added 1976, chapter 938. So that's the answer. If this was my code, if this was my state code section. Now for federal, you'll want to fill in the chart for, and let's go back to the question. So fill in the chart, page 4, download from the course website under final exam link. And again, the final exam link is here, which is how I got to this page here. For now those question marks, that's going to be a year. This is exactly what you did in the assignment. I gave you a year for an amendment, and I asked you to find to fill in the chart for that year. Now, what I strongly suggest you do, if you can remember, is when you find the federal code section, look at the credits. So if you find 1144 is the answer you think is the code section you're going to go, look at the credits and make sure you find the year in here. Because if you don't find the year in the section, federal section you're using, you probably didn't find the right section. Does that make sense? Please speak up if it doesn't. So if I were doing the HMO liability question, what I should read here is fill in the chart, page 4, for the 1993 amending federal legislation. So I would go and I would find 1993. So that's good old PL 103-66. That's the public law number that I will be using to fill in the chart. So what I would do is when I first find that section, hopefully I remember, I go, okay, it's good. I write down on or put it in my Word document, PL 103-66, and go back and finish the rest of part 2. And then when I'm ready to sound part 3, I've already got the PL number. So you've already got the PL number. That's going to go on the top part here. The popular name, if you see it. And the USCA, USCS section number, that's what you started with, remember. So you already have that information. And again, you'll fill in the chart just as we have done twice now. Once you did it for the assignment and once we did it in a workshop. Except this time you only have 2 columns to worry about instead of 3. Again, remember, you will not necessarily find a document under ProQuest or under Westlaw for every one of these document types. It's very possible there are no hearings. It's very possible there's no conference report. There most likely will be congressional record. There may or may not be presidential signing statements. So just write none. Okay, a couple of pitfalls people fell in on the assignment. Remember, with the congressional record are the debates. So you're going to see in one or both sources the heading debates. You will not see the heading congressional record. You need to see debates and say in your brain, congressional record equals debates, and that's where you'll find the information to fill in those boxes. But also remember, because a couple of you made this mistake as well, congressional record does not equal committee reports. Sometimes you will see reference to a committee report in the congressional record with a congressional citation. So it'll say Congrec, and it'll talk about a committee report. That's just where in the congressional record the committee report was mentioned. You need a committee report citation. You need an HRPT or an SRPT. And also, you only need one of each document. If you want to list more, but I'm only looking for one. In the congressional record, I give you the important information. If you can find the speaker, great. If not, that's okay. If you understand what these documents are, this will be easy. So when you're reviewing, make sure you understand. If you don't, please, please, please ask. For those of you who have come to ask me questions, I haven't bitten you yet, right? Okay. And I see it figured. There's always one. Okay, so again, I put the state session law on top because in past, students taking the exam have just missed it. And again, I hate that. So that's why it may make it seem like it makes less sense, because I ask you in the text of the question, I ask the federal first and then the state. But for some reason with the state at the bottom of the page, people seem to miss it. So I'm hoping that will make it less likely. So I'm hoping also that doesn't confuse you. Don't think it should, but okay, so that's part B. Yes.
Sorry, you may have already mentioned this. I just
Please
noticed
ask.
it. For that part, for part B, for the actual statute section, that is the statutory section that we're finding for part 2A3, the best.
Yes.
Best case. Okay.
And likewise for the state, the best state code section. Okay, any questions, or can I move on to part 3? Part 3 is the research strategy question. It's pretty much very similar to what I asked you to do at the end of assignment 5. And it's one reason why I insist you all get me assignment 5 so I can get assignment 5 back to you by next Tuesday, so you have my comments in there to go by, to make sure, to avoid whatever pitfalls you may have fallen into for assignment 5, to avoid them in the final exam. You look perplexed, John.
Do you want me to hand it in?
You did hand it in, but I haven't handed it back yet.
Oh, okay.
But
Look.
I made it due when it was due, and I made the get out of jail free a shorter time period so that I could get it back to you.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, so I'm asking you to make recommendations as to the research methodology or strategy, if you prefer. You would recommend to your managing partner to research your issues. So this is your boss, you want to make a good impression. You must justify your recommendations by explaining why you are directing to a particular resource or search strategy. Okay, so don't tell me, I like Lexis, I like Westlaw. Tell me, Westlaw's really good because the natural language pulled up after a fairly basic search. The filters allowed me to go in, and I liked Lexis because the treatises were really good. I found such and such treatise. Do not tell me general research techniques. Don't explain key numbers to me. I know how they work. Don't explain why secondary sources are useful because you learn. Tell me such and such treatise was useful because it provided me this terminology, or it referred me to the best statute section that I found. Be as specific as possible to the examples I'm giving you. Make sure to specify any useful secondary sources identified, and by specify I mean tell me what ALR article or what AmJur section, what treatise, what law review title, and any critical primary sources. So here I am asking you to repeat because I want to see that you understand that this is a critical primary source. So tell me. And I found, and then you should go to the code where you will find 29 USCA 1144, which discusses preemption specifically. Okay, don't just list those citations. Give me how you got those citations as well. So I want to see where you want to start. That was a question in assignment 5. AmJur better? ALR better? I want to see what searches turned out to be good searches. And then what resources did those searches produce that you would want to check to research this issue. If this works for you, it's not required, but it tends to help people think logically. Do a step by step. If you want to give me numbered steps. Step 1, start in, for our HMO, I would say, step 1, start in ALR. I found ALR by searching liability, HMO, and filtering to ALR. From that, you would learn that section 29 USCA 1144 on preemption is very important. Going to section 1144, I learned that there are other good secondary sources, if you did. I also looked at the notes of decisions under a topic heading ERISA. And I found such and such case. I also did, you'll also want to mention, and again I said you don't have to do this in part 2, but you'll also want to mention, because this is good strategy, if you do find, and I mentioned this in your assignment 4, if you do find notes of and we talked about this when we talked about cases, if you do find a great case in notes of decisions, you still want to do a separate keyword search, because notes of decision may or may not cover important cases. Likewise, if you do get a great reference to a statutory code section from ALR, you still want to do a separate search because maybe ALR didn't mention another important statutory code section. So you'll want to say, I found this in ALR, but for the code, you'll also want to try such and such search to see what else you can find. So imagine in part 3 that who's ever reading this hasn't read part 1 and 2. So don't assume that I will know what you mean because you did it in part 1 and 2. State it in part 3. Again, when in doubt, include it. There are no word limits, so you don't have to count words, worry about staying in the limit. When in doubt, include it. Another way to think about part 3, imagine you're going to have to research this very issue 10 years from now. So you'll want good searches, especially because you're going to have to redo your research, right? Things can change. You want to know what the good case and good statute is because, well, maybe they're still good, but you're also going to need to update your research. You want to certainly know good secondary sources. Again, they may be out of date at that point, so again, you'll want to know good searches to find other good secondary sources that may be more up to date in 2025. Okay. Any questions? I'm going through my notes because there are things I want to make sure I mention. Okay, in part 3, spend your time discussing the good resources and the good searches. You may want to briefly mention this didn't really work, but that's not what's important. What's important is you discuss what works. So again, I'm looking for good searches, liability HMO was example, good encyclopedia sections, good treatises if any, ALR if any, whichever you choose. You don't have to do them all, remember. Again, good code sections, state and federal cases. Make sure that you mention that you have to update, that you want to make sure to shepherdize, make sure that this is still good law. Again, mention that you want to check notes of decisions and any useful topic headings that you may have found. If you didn't find any, that's okay, but you want to check notes of decisions. Again, 10 years hence, there may be great notes of decisions. Okay, there are no questions, a couple of overall strategy points. Again, do your best to organize your answers around the questions. I gave you these suggestions. If they work for you, great. If they don't work for you and you have another way, that's perfectly fine. But the more difficult it is for me to figure out what question you're answering or where your answer is, the less likely I'm going to succeed. Please, if you have time, spell check and proofread. Some of you have noticed in your assignments, when I see it, I'll make little corrections. I'm not a great proofreader, and it's not a place I'm particularly fussy at. Believe me, there are attorneys who are. I'm more fussy on time, as you know. But if you have a word in there that I can't figure out what it is because there's a typo, that's going to make it more difficult. Please don't use shorthand. I mean, you can use abbreviations like ALR. But if you start using texting shorthand, I may not be able to figure that out. Again, when in doubt, include it. However, please just don't copy and paste the entire annotated code for your section and expect I'm going to pick out the relevant cases, secondary sources, and statutes. I don't expect it. Actually, one person did that once, which is why I now have that in my notes. I don't expect any of you would do that. So again, when in doubt, include it, but just don't copy and paste everything and expect me to pick it out. That's your job. Again, you can use print or online. I am ambivalent. One won't be better than the other. I don't expect their question.
We have to do the exam here.
You need to pick it up. You'll need to pick it up.
Can we leave?
You can go wherever you like, but you need to bring the question sheets back at 5 o'clock. It's part of the instructions on page 1. Okay. Again, I strongly recommend creating a checklist or adapting what I gave you as a checklist. Again, I will respond to whatever questions you have to everybody, unless it's a personal question, and then, of course, I wouldn't. And I will post them on the website. As you see, the exam template is there, and it will remain there. Okay, if you get references, I think I said this, but I'll say it again. When you get references from other sources, say cases from the notes of decisions, mention that. But make sure that you search the sources. I know what I said before. Now that I think about it, I realize I'm being unclear. Make sure if you get references from secondary sources or you get references from the notes of decisions, definitely say that, but try another search and tell me what you searched. And maybe you didn't get anything else, and that's fine, but definitely do another search. I realize I'm getting contradictory, so let's leave it at that. Definitely, and that is good research practice if you have to research an issue thoroughly. So tell me your references, then do a search. You will have been developing searches, so you don't have to develop totally different searches. You can, if you find a good search, use the same search throughout. Okay, make sure you know where 102B is. I'll do a field trip upstairs after class if anybody would like that. Budget your time in advance. There's a tendency to spend a whole lot of time on part 1 and then race through part 3. Also part B is for legislative history, part 2B is important, but don't spend a whole lot of time because it's not nearly as important as part A. So you have 8 hours. You might want to try spending 2 hours on each. That's a total of 6. That gives you plenty of 2.5 on each. It gives you leeway with a little bit of time to take a lunch break. Definitely take a lunch break. I mean, don't go out for an hour and a half unless you're done. Your brain needs fuel, and a rest is probably a good thing too. Study suggestions, what you might try to do is take the exam with the assignment hypothetical that you didn't use. So if you did the T question, try the FOIA question. If your assignment hypothetical is the FOIA question, take the exam with the T question. Okay? And last but not least has to do with next class, but if you have questions about the exam, next class is what I call fun and games. It will be a review, but it will be a review in the style of a sort of legal research Jeopardy. I will ask you to divide up into teams of 3, although if everybody's here, then there'll be 1 team with 4. I will be bringing munchies. Bring your own beverage, whatever you like. And the munchies won't be anything remotely healthy, just fair warning.
Can we bring, like, are we gonna have time for questions?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I know that the review, whether we
You mean next Tuesday?
yeah, like next Tuesday, if we want to say, hey, I'm having trouble with this concept.
Yes, absolutely, but what I would like to do is do that after class is done.
Okay.
So people can stay if they want. I mean, and probably, actually, there will be time during the regular class time. We won't go right to 5:30 with the review.
Okay.
So, we'll probably finish up something like 5:15, maybe even before, depending on how the day goes, so that there will be time. But, as I said, it will just work better if we wait until the fun and games are done. Again, go through it, think about it, any questions, and don't worry if I probably said this before. I'm happy to say it 18 more times if that's what helps. The reason I devote the whole class to this is to do my best to have you understand what's expected, have the exam questions in front of you. Hopefully that's a help, and I'll do as best I can, as I said, to make sure that you understand. Your job is to make sure you understand how all the resources we talked about worked. Again, as I mentioned last time, the research strategy checklist that I handed out in paper last time, that's also in the handouts here on the web. That might be a good checklist for you to make sure you understand what you need to know. So perhaps compare that against the exam questions. So you say, okay, I know how to do that. Oh wait, legislative history, I don't remember that part. And either come ask or go back in your notes. This session has been recorded. Again, if that helps you, but I certainly don't expect you to go through an hour and a half recording. Come ask me if you have particular questions. Okay. see you next time. Remember to bring your own beverage. I'll send an email to remind you all on that next week.